Right now, doctors are marveling at what's being called the world's oldest baby. The Ohio boy was born from an embryo frozen in 1994, and he was conceived in a lab by a couple using IVF, which was relatively new at the time. His adoptive parents found the embryo through a Christian adoption embryo agency. And so for more on all this, I want to bring in ABC News medical contributor Dr. Alok Patel. And Dr. Patel, happy Friday. Thanks for joining us. But first, this is a record, and it's really kind of remarkable. But what's the reaction in the medical community to this news?
You know, Alex, I know people will see these headlines and think this is sci-fi, this is something in the future, but some of the physicians and scientists I've talked to are like, hey, no, this is what we can do with reproductive science and technology. The fertility doctors I've talked to, the reproductive endocrinologists, see this headline and say, yes, spread awareness that we can keep these embryos frozen for a very long period of time. But if you look at the broader conversation among the healthcare community, this really sits in that Venn diagram of human biology and development, scientific advancement, and ethics and individuality in kind of making these decisions for families. So yes, call it a scientific marvel, appreciate science, and realize that there's a lot of humanity in this story.
Well, and that's a really good point, Doc, but I'm also kind of curious, implanting older embryos, is it more of a risk?
From everything that the data suggests and what I've talked to about the experts here, the only risk or the only higher risk situation really comes at the age of the woman when the embryo was frozen. But if the embryo successfully can be thawed and passes screening, the risk is exactly the same. It could be an embryo that's been frozen for a few months or one that's been frozen for 30 years. Because remember, this baby was born at term and is fully healthy. So that actual freezing process is what matters. And that process has actually advanced over time. After the year 2000, the new method of cryopreservation is even more advanced with a higher success rate when it comes to thawing.
Well, and so with that in mind, are you expecting to see older embryos, become more of a trend with IVF?
You know, in general, we are seeing higher rates of ART, that's assisted reproductive technology, and IVF is one of them. So there is an unknown question about what is going to happen with these potential millions of frozen embryos across the world. But Alex, we see that CDC birth rates are going down. The request for IVF is actually going up. About 2 to 3% of U.S. births are born from ART, and that's higher in some states. And it's unfortunately lower in other states as well, where people may want to seek this technology, but may not be able to because of access, healthcare policy in that state, or insurance coverage.
Well, and lastly, I mean, obviously, something like this grabs headlines and it's fun to talk about, but are there ethical questions here?
That's exactly right. So there are ethical questions, and these are questions that we should be asking and making sure that people are on the same page with, because it affects state-by-state policy. One of the biggest questions is, what is the future of frozen embryos that may not be put up for adoption? What is the ethical consideration when it comes to research, and who actually owns, I may say that, when it comes to embryos? So we have to have these conversations while we are talking about advancements in science and celebrating new births.
All good points. Dr. Alok Patel, thank you so much.